Okay, let's get started paper macheing now. You'll need a brown paper bag, like a supermarket bag. Some newspaper could come in handy, and possibly some toilet paper if you can spare the precious toilet paper. And it might be useful to have some kind of a tool that you can use. If nothing else, even like a chopstick would just be fine. And of course, the little sculpture you made out of wire, newspaper, and tape. So, for the brown paper bag and the paper mache paste that you already made, the brown paper bag, you need to remove the handles, and you'll see that there's a seam on the paper bag, and you should rip off that seam. Don't use scissors to cut your paper. It's much better to rip it, because any thing that's cut with scissors or machine cut from the bag would show up on your puppet. Instead of sort of looking like skin, it'll look like paper, and we want to avoid that. So you just rip off the bottom of the bag and that seam down the middle, and any machine cut edges you'll just rip off, like the top there has that edge, so that all the edges of your paper are ripped. And then tear off a piece of paper and dip your fingers in your paper mache paste, get a little bit on your fingers, and just rub it on your paper. Now I'm going to do that again and show you the difference between this, which all I've done is rub the paper mache paste on, and another one that I rub the paper mache paste on, but then I crumple it, and I crumple it and crumple it and work it, and crumple it some more and work it with the paper mache paste. And what I'm doing is breaking up the fibers of the paper and getting the paper supple and sort of infused with the paste. And now just look at the difference between that and that. And you can see it's got a different color, a different quality. It's not flat, it's bendy. This is what you want, not this. Work your paper, crumple your paper. That's good. This is bad. So once you've done that, rip off little strips, and on your sculpture, the thinner the strips, the better, for most parts. If you're doing like a broad, flat area, you can use a little bit of a bigger piece, like that, and smooth it down onto it. Make sure that the paper mache paper is contacting your sculpture. If not, you'll create air bubbles, and so you just put them down and smooth it. Now, when you get to more detailed areas, you'll want to use even thinner strips to get around those things. So, like right in here, in the joint of the leg, I'll go around and just smooth it on. And I'll do that again in the other direction. And strips are really useful shapes rather than like squares that for getting around curves and so forth. So just keep ripping this. You've already crumpled it, got the paper mache paste on it. So just keep ripping off little strips and using those strips to go around your shapes. Trying not to create any folds or air bubbles, just having it connect. Right? And if you do notice that you've got some sort of foldy piece, don't worry about it. Just put another piece over that and smooth it out. The idea is that you're going to be trying to kind of make it like a smooth skin. So you just keep going around, and on more detailed areas like around the ears and the horns, you could even use thinner strips to get into those areas, and just patiently go around and just keep keep going. And you're only going to need one, or possibly in some areas 2 layers. Most areas are probably 1 layer is just fine, but when you get to these joints where like the legs connect with the body, you might want to go around with some extra pieces just to make sure that they're sturdy and don't end up getting wobbly or breaking. So you might, in certain areas, especially where the legs or the ears and so forth connect, you could go around, with an extra piece. Just keep doing that. Keep doing that and keep doing that until it's totally covered. Once it's totally covered, and here's one that I did already that's totally covered. This one, it was the simpler model where all I made out of wire were the legs, right? This one had the ears and everything, but this is just a simple, much simpler shape. And once it's covered, totally covered like that and totally smooth, you could leave it at that and let it dry, and that would be fine, and then go on to painting. And you could paint in all the features, the mouth and the eyes and whatever. But if you want to, now's the time when you could add a little bit more sculptural stuff. It's not the time to add anything like wings or long horns or long ears. That would have been something you would have wanted to use with wire. But little shapes, and now that's when you can take a piece of newspaper, which is a much softer, kind of thinner paper than the brown paper, get the paper mache paste on the bit of newspaper, and you can crumple it up and use it almost like clay. And say maybe I want to make little ears, not big ears, but just little stubby ears. And just stick that right on there. And I'll make another one. Just get the paste all into the newspaper and make a little shape, just like with clay, and then stick that on, right? And maybe you can try to use tissue paper, which is even thinner, and use that also, very much like clay. It just becomes mush. And then you can use that to create more shapes. And maybe I want to make some lips. And so I'll just take this paper and I just stuck it on there and made some lips. And after you add all the sculptural elements that you're going to want to add with either the newspaper or the toilet paper, you're going to go ahead and take the brown paper and just go over those new shapes. So there we go. Just going over my shape. Using little thin strips of brown paper to go around those shapes and make it one with the whole piece. And one thing also just that I forgot to mention is a place like the bottom of the foot might be tricky. Use very thin strips and go in one direction and another thin strip in the other direction, and just keep going around until you've covered up all the newspaper and tape and it's just all brown paper. So that's all you do. You just keep putting strips on and keep covering places that that maybe don't look good until it's all smooth and covered with the brown paper. Okay? And the same thing with these new sculptural parts. I'm going to take the paper and put it over those lips that I made there. and keep doing that until it's all covered with the brown paper. And after that, you're gonna just, once you're done with all your sculptural elements, you're just gonna let it dry. And if you want it to dry faster, you can put it in the sun, or put it by a fan, or just let it dry. And it should be, dry. If you put it in the sun, it'll dry very quickly, within a couple of hours. Or you can let it dry overnight, and after it's done drying, we'll get to the next step, which will be painting. Okay? Have fun.